feed, please.
Okay, Ralph, you're good.
Thanks, Brent.
You're welcome.
Good evening. At this time, we will reconvene our November 10th, 2020 Board of Education workshop meeting. Mr. Smythe, can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Gartz?
Here.
You, Mr. Hall?
I'm here.
Mr. Krupa?
Here.
Ms. Mangan?
Here.
Mr. Nasser?
Here.
Mr. Sanfilippo?
Here.
Ms. Stites?
Here.
Mr. Wondrak?
Here.
And Mr. Anisio.
Here. Thank you. At this time, before we start the committee reports, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Handerhan for a little report. Dr. Handerhan?
Thank you, Mr. Anisio. Good evening. I would like to provide everyone with some updates regarding industrial hygienist Dr. Richard Lynch's extensive report on the presence of mercury in the South Gym floor at Wall High School. This report will be posted on the district's website tomorrow under Facilities Updates. Additionally, I am pleased to announce that Dr. Lynch will present his findings on Monday, November 16th at 7 p.m. during a virtual presentation, which will be immediately followed by a town hall style Q&A. The purpose of this Q&A is to provide members of this community the opportunity to ask Dr. Lynch questions regarding his findings and the report. The Zoom link will be communicated through our district website. I would also like to provide some information regarding the notification and prevalence of COVID-19 in the school district. Firstly, the school district, all school districts in New Jersey, are obligated to notify individuals if they have been identified as being in close contact with an individual who is positive for COVID-19, either at school or during a school event. The most recent definition of close contact per the CDC is this: someone who was within 6 feet of an infected person for a cumulative total of 15 minutes or more over a 24-hour period, starting from 2 days before illness onset, or for asymptomatic patients 2 days prior to test specimen collection, until the time the patient is isolated. When a principal or school nurse is notified that an individual has tested positive for COVID-19 and has attended school, thereby potentially exposing others, the following notification steps take place. We open a line of communication with our local Board of Health regarding this specific case to discuss contact tracing efforts. We examine every aspect of the student or staff member's day. In the case of students, seating charts are pulled for every class, and seating charts and/or videos are pulled for buses. The busing is important if a student does indeed ride the bus. We determine if the individual participates in after-school activities. Every individual deemed to have been in close contact by the aforementioned definition is contacted directly by the school district and as quickly as possible. These close contacts must quarantine. The staff is notified when an individual in the school has tested positive, and a letter is sent home to families indicating an individual or individuals have tested positive in school and that their child may have had casual contact. Additionally, if the individual rides the bus, close contacts are identified and all parents of students assigned to the bus receive what I'll refer to as a casual contact letter. I would like to pause and stress that the school is only obligated to identify close contacts. This may have had casual contact letters. They are a courtesy to the families of this district. I would also like to mention that positive COVID-19 cases may be reported as a cluster. For instance, siblings, friend groups, teams, etc. For example, if we are informed of 2 siblings who are positive that attend one school, we only send 1 courtesy casual contact letter, not 2. I would also like to discuss presumed positive cases. If a doctor has deemed an individual presumed positive, we treat it as a positive case for the most part until we know otherwise. We contact trace to identify close contacts and quarantine individuals if deemed necessary. In elementary school, only the parents in that class are made aware of the presumed positive case, not the entire school. The school-wide casual contact letter will be sent if the case is determined to be positive. We have had instances where a child was presumed positive but tested negative. In this case, only a presumed positive letter was sent to the parents in the class. A school-wide notification was not sent. Individuals in the presumed positive but tested negative class identified as a close contact may return at that point from quarantine. There are instances where it is not appropriate to send notification letters. If a student attends school virtually and does not participate in after-school activities, a casual contact letter would not be sent home. If a student has already been quarantining and has not been in school to expose others, a letter would not be sent home. The casual contact letters are sent to advise parents that their child may have had casual contact with someone at school. That said, with a rapidly increasing number of positive cases in our immediate area, I anticipate more administrative and nursing efforts will be needed for contact tracing to determine these close contacts. I anticipate having to explore an alternative means of informing the community of these casual contacts. I would like to mention that the hybrid cohort schedules at the intermediate and high schools have drastically reduced the number of students required to quarantine due to the definitions of close contacts in school. More specifically, because 50% of the students report to the secondary schools on each day, most desks are placed further than 6 feet apart. This considerable physical distancing has prevented many students from mandated quarantine. I would also like to add, at the secondary level, students are in multiple classrooms. They travel. And not only do we have to consider one classroom, we have to consider their classroom seating and seat charts to identify close contacts in every single classroom where they are throughout the day. Since September, I have been made aware of 23 positive COVID-19 cases in our school district, 4 staff members, and 19 students across the K-12 spectrum. To my knowledge, no cases were connected to school transmission. In the younger grades, most have been traced back to a COVID positive parent. In the upper grades, most transmissions have been linked to non-school related organized activities. In K-5, we have had 6 reported cases. In grades 6 through 8, we have had 5. And in grades 9 through 12, we have had 8 reported cases. Thank you very much. Mr. Adonisio, back to you.
Thank you, Dr. Hagman. So at this time, we will go into policy. Mr. Hall. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay, yeah, we had a policy meeting and had quite a few policies that we went over in committee. So I just wanted to give you a quick idea of what we're talking about. Interesting one. This is the main policy, is a revision, and it updates the policy.
Joe, I think you're frozen. You there, Joe?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Now we
Can hear
can.
you now. Yeah, you froze up.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, so the policy 1620 is about, it's a mandated policy from New Jersey law that changed the way, it actually comes from the Wall Township problem that we had with Superintendent Dyer, that legal decision. Basically, it just requires anytime we amend a contract for a superintendent, assistant superintendent, or business administrator, a public meeting must take place. And it also updates the removal of salary caps as provided by the law for the superintendent. So again, all these are pretty much mandated policies. We don't have a lot of wiggle room. We're following the guidance of the law, basically to amend a policy that's there now, just to make it so it's compliant with the legal aspect. Policy 1648, the Restart and Recovery Plan. This is again another mandated policy that would change the fact that mask coverings are now required, except under very limited conditions. Also, the Board of Health will do contract tracing with people who had 15 minutes of cumulative contact with a positive person instead of the 10 minutes at one time. So it used to be they defined close contact if you were with somebody for 10 minutes at a time. Now they're saying it's if you have 15 minutes cumulative, is that to meet that new law. Policy 1648 spot 02, also part of the recovery. This basically spells out how the district must provide the public about the points of entry back into learning. So when we say, hey, if you want to go virtual, that's fine, but at the end of the marking period is when we can take you back. We're midway through the marking period, or whatever the policy is. Basically, we have to spell that out at the beginning and make sure the public knows these are the actual dates. It may not be like an actual day like January 3rd. It could be at the end of the marking period, and so that would change each year depending on when that marking period ended. But if this was to go further, but policy 164803 is also part of the whole restart and recovery. This basically explains in detail what we would have to do in a step-by-step way if the district somehow had to go back to all virtual. So if we had to go all virtual, the policy is based on the Executive Order 175, requires us to notify the superintendent. The county superintendent, and basically just it lays out the steps that you would need to take if that was to unfortunately come to pass. Policy 50, the seizure action plan. This is a new policy, but it's again mandated, that requires the district to have an individual plan for students who have a history of seizures. The plan itself will come largely from the parent, who provides documentations from the physician regarding the history and the treatment of the child. It's very similar to the way the district already runs EpiPens and diabetes plans, where we have them on file for certain students. This is just kind of just adding another one to it. So, of it being that it's a new policy, it still should fit in with what we're doing already for some other issues. So that should be that should be fine. The regulation of it is 5330 spot 05. This regulation just lists out the, the actions necessary to carry out the policy. And mandated policy clarifies and updates the language in the policy to match the existing technology updates in New Jersey law. So again, this policy was looked at. It has a couple of legal citations that are no longer accurate that need to be taken out. But again, it follows the law, and that's what we made this policy changes there. Last two, policy 8320, personnel records. This is mandated, clarifies what personnel records are appropriate for Oprah requests. Again, that's a new law. They kind of basically laid out what you can Oprah and what you cannot Oprah. Basically requires us what we have to save and what we can give through the Oprah request. And then the regulation 8320 basically is just, again, for all second readings. Doctor, do you need me to go through the second readings?
No, I think you did a great job last time.
Again, I mean, they're all basically just to quickly, I'll just basically say.
I'm sorry, Mr. Hall, you broke up.
Mr. Hall, you're frozen.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
I didn't hear the last thing that you said regarding the second readings.
Yeah, the second reading, I just didn't know if I needed to go over those.
Well, just perhaps the titles, since we've gone through them
Okay.
quite a few times.
Uh,
Yeah.
Right. The second reading is the student assessment, 2622, 51.
Joe, you're frozen.
The regulation. Tracy, you want to read them?
Yeah, I'll take care of it. 5111 speaks to the eligibility of resident, non-resident students. That spoke to the not using DMB as an excluding factor to demonstrate residency, and also the consideration of changes in visas that had taken place. The other, as I'm flipping through, that's a long one with all the regulations. The next is the policy number 5330.04, and that speaks to the administering of opioid antidote, and that is the extension of having Narcan in the schools for emergency situations, and having it accessible to adjacent school activities that are adjacent to the school campus. And the remaining policies speak to discipline, speaks to updating the policy with respect to disciplinary actions regarding suspensions and expulsions. And it's the insurance that there are meetings that do take place along the way with appropriate counseling with administration and various student advocates through the district throughout the process. And it's, I am pleased to share that, it's discipline is, the philosophy is it's a learning process, and, and it should be treated as such, and it is so in this district. So it's, there's a lot can be learned from that process. And this policy really just puts pen to paper on practices that are best practices that are followed in this district already. And that wraps that up, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Thank you, Dr. Handerham. Okay, we will move on to curriculum and instruction. Mr. Krupa. You're on mute.
Myself. Yes, I am. I just unmuted myself. I just want to let everybody know including the public, obviously, that we continue to look at issues that come to our attention and come to our own thought processes as a board. So tonight, we're definitely going to hear about social emotional learning, special education, technology, and another program that just typically has been coming up this time of year because of the way it runs, and that's the Performing Arts Academy, not academy, but program. And Dr. Gleason is, of course, our resident expert. And so without further ado, I'm just going to let her do her thing. And I think maybe for the last time for us too. So with a happy and heavy heart, Dr. Gleason.
Thank you, Mr. Krupp. I appreciate that. I will lead us through the agenda items. The first item on the curriculum instruction agenda is the Monmouth County Arts Program, which is a middle school and high school arts program. I wanted to give the board some context around the history of this program. The program is a special release time program. It's run by a organization out of Middletown. It has been in Monmouth County since, I believe, before 2004. Districts can choose to partner with this organization or not partner with the organization. And prior to 2018, my understanding was that we had chosen not to financially partner with Monmouth County Arts Program. That's not atypical. I've spoken to the arts program. They have, as I said, some districts that choose to support the promotion of the program, to offer it to students, but it is a tuition-based program. And so some districts choose to provide they budget a certain amount of money, and that can be used to subsidize student tuition for any students who are accepted. And then some districts choose to provide a full tuition subsidy to cover the cost of tuition for students. So there's a range of ways to either partner or technically not partner. So in 2018, the Monmouth County Arts Program provided an assembly at both the intermediate school and the high school. This is only a secondary program for students in grades 6 through 12. And as I mentioned, it's a gifted and talented program. Students need to show some exceptionality around the areas of the arts that they're interested in. And they have to be vetted by the school administration for their own academics, attendance, so on and so forth. The average tuition for middle school, including transportation, which the organization provides, is approximately $845 per student. And at the high school, in the past, the tuition was $860. It's anywhere from 12 to 14-week program, and the students that are accepted leave at approximately 1:30, and they are there on site for several hours. In 2018, we had several students who we knew were now applying, and there were some questions from parents about whether the board would be supporting any kind of financial partnership. And at that time, the board decided to provide 2 scholarships for both the intermediate school and the high school. So a total of 4 scholarships. The budget item was for $3,600. And we may or may not use it. If 2 students were accepted, they could receive those scholarships at the intermediate school, and the same at the high school. But that was budgeted. 20 students applied that year, and as it turned out, 9 were accepted. The board, in further discussion and upon the appeal of many parents who didn't know that the program had that tuition attached to it, and that was because the program facilitators during the assembly didn't share what the tuition was. Parents had appealed to the board to potentially cover the cost further for the tuition. So in 2018, 2019 school year, the board did increase funding and subsidize all 9 students the cost of their tuition, not the cost of materials, not the cost of the application fees, but the cost of tuition. The following year, the board in 2019-20, last year, that board, we had a discussion in curriculum work and instruction workshop again, and the board budgeted $10,000. And based upon the success of the prior year students who had attended, and that was the figure that was budgeted for 2019-20. Last year, we had more than approximately 25 students apply, and 17 students were accepted. Now, at this time, all parents were made aware of how much was budgeted, and that potentially, depending on the number of students who are accepted, potentially their child's tuition could be covered, or a portion of it would be covered if there were a large number of students that were accepted into the program. So that information was provided ahead of time. Again, we had several parents appeal to the board to reconsider that funding. And in January, the board agreed to increase that funding from $10,000 to $14,485, which essentially covered the cost of all 17 students' tuition only. Again, parents were responsible for application fees and resources. During budget development season last fall, the board agreed to a $15,000 budget line item for the Monmouth County Middle Arts and High School Arts Program. That was aligned with what the board paid last year. And I bring this to your attention because we have, several new board members, and we had a discussion in C&I around the cost of the program and the value of the program, which I think there is some value in the program for sure. I know that in speaking to the students, they have some, very positive things to say about their experience. This year, as we all know, there have been a lot of unexpected expenditures. And so I bring this to the board in light of all of those expenditures, and in light of the fact that we are in the season where students are sending in their applications. The Monmouth County Arts Program did speak with us earlier in the fall to ask if we had budgeted funds, and they were aware that we budgeted $15,000. That doesn't mean we have to spend $15,000, but we had initially budgeted $15,000. My understanding is we currently have 5 students from the intermediate school who have sent in applications, and 2 at the high school. And the application period is open until November 15th. The program runs from February through May. The program has changed in format due to COVID. So the program is no longer a special release time. The program is now a live virtual program, and it's running from 3 in the afternoon until 6 o'clock. I haven't received the revised tuition rates, but I would anticipate that there would be some reduction in the rates based upon the fact that no transportation is being provided. The cost of that transportation in the past was approximately $105 per student. So I did a little analysis of the kinds of courses that are being offered. I do know that the instructors at the Monmouth County Arts Program are highly esteemed in their field. And in speaking to parents, they feel that their children had received, an above average experience. But again, we have to think about the cost of the program, the total number of students that those funds are servicing, and that the format is another virtual format, albeit live virtual. It's another virtual experience that students would have to log into from 3 in the afternoon until 6 at night, once each week. And we're not sure how engaged students are going to be, as opposed to being on site with a much more hands-on interactive experience. So I wanted to bring that to you for your discussion tonight and for your consideration as we are sort of, time is of the essence in looking at that budget item.
Dr. Gleason,
Yes, Mr. Gartz?
I appreciate the backstory and I remember the decision last year. So what are you asking us to discuss tonight? Is there a number associated or I guess not, because you don't know the tuition. We don't know how many kids actually applied, or is it a discussion of whether we're going to do this at all?
It's all of those things, actually, Mr. Gartz. I do have as of today, we have a total of 7 students that have applied. That is still open until November 15th. So until Sunday. So I don't anticipate that we would have a huge amount of additional applications, but we could. There's no way to know that. I bring it to you purely because as I said, there have been a lot of unexpected expenditures this year, and because the program can become, I don't want to say controversial, but it does garner a lot of discussion each year because what we budget typically the number of students that are accepted seems to rise each year, and then that figure we haven't necessarily held to that budgeted figure in the past. So it's certainly worthy of a discussion there. 15,000 was budgeted specifically for this program back in the spring.
And what do other districts do? Do you have any ideas to full pay, half pay, all pay?
Yes, I do. In fact, last year I asked that same question, and it's quite honestly, it's across the board. Districts are, as I said, either not paying at all. They budget. Most districts do exactly what we began doing, which was this is our budget. And depending upon the number of students that get accepted, if we currently have 7 students that have applied, if those 7 students, if that is the total number of students who actually get accepted within the current budget, we would be able to fully fund their tuition. But what seems to have happened over the last 2 years is that that number has grown, the number of applications, and then the number of students who are accepted. And so the number has exceeded what we budgeted each year. So I didn't want to presume that, especially because the program has changed its instructional format, that was something that the board necessarily was going to support again, or if we want to pick up that discussion once we actually have harder numbers.
Does the committee have a recommendation for the board, or is this just everybody considers it on their own?
Ralph, we did have same questions you did, even the fact that when the students, if it's not virtual or going out, there's exposure to non-wall students. And there was the other piece of this, which is that we have an arts program internally, and what are the comparables to the Monmouth County Arts Program and ours. There is also the budgetary question and the possibility of state aid not being strong this coming year. And we did want to throw it out to all of you, thinking you probably would have some of the same questions or thoughts about this, but Ken, Aaron, and Chris were in on the meeting as well. They could, if I missed anything, add to that or say, yeah, Andy, you did it. I think it's something we have to consider, whether we're going to do it or not.
I have a question. Dr. Gleason, do the students know, because we didn't know this at the time of the curriculum meeting, do the students know that it is in a virtual format and that it's being held once a week during this time frame, so the commitment's being made up on behalf of them?
So tomorrow morning is the, again, they normally come in November and do an assembly for the students and then send home information to the parents. In speaking to both the administrators at the intermediate and the high school, it looks like tomorrow is their Zoom meeting. But apparently some information has already gone out because we have students who have already begun to apply. So, I'm not sure how much information has been preliminarily communicated, but tomorrow is an information session via Zoom. So I'm not sure how many parents will want their children or how many students will want to be online. I looked last year at some of the course selections to sort of do a crosswalk between the types of courses students were applying for and being accepted for compared to what's in our current curriculum, whether it's co-curricular or after school. And some of the areas that students were accepted into was the creative writing. At the high school was creative writing, which we do offer creative writing 1 and 2 at the high school. Vocal music, Broadway, we had 4 students in vocal music, Broadway. We do offer vocal performance 1 and 2 at the high school. We also had some students who went for visual art specific to anime, which is a very specific medium of visual art. At the middle, so, we have similar, if not the same course. What Monmouth County Arts promotes is that this is in addition to what students can take in school because it is considered enrichment for students who demonstrate some, above average talent in those areas. So at the middle school last year, students went for theater arts, photography, vocal music, creative writing, modern dance, which we do not have a modern dance. We had some students go for creative writing, which we do offer as an elective. So there are some things we do offer and some that we don't. And some of the things that we do offer, again, this is promoted as a program that has industry experts specializing in those fields. I have no reason to doubt that. But I do think that we have to consider that this is an outside organization, and this could be something that any organization could come to us and ask to partner with us, offering sort of these extended enrichment programs. And it's something worth, I think, discussion, as I said.
Christine?
So it's probably, as usual, going to take me probably a night to digest this. But I mean, I've had questions about this program. I think it's a fabulous program. But I do have questions about it. Some of the same concerns that you're mentioning there. I wish these were things that we could offer within our own district. I don't know. I feel like we need to look at our Visual and Performing Arts Academy again and see where maybe we could be potentially, and I'm not saying necessarily under the umbrella of Visual and Performing Arts Academy, but somehow be offering some of this in the district. All that being said, I would say though that we did budget money for this and we've already got kids who have applied for it. And I don't know if yanking this out from under their feet at this point is necessarily the way to go, but I definitely think that moving forward as we approach our next budget season, that we need to take a good hard look at a couple of different things and how we're actually spending our money. But that being said, for the kids that are currently already applying and trying to work this into their schedule, I hate to sound like the bleeding heart, but I really hate to yank anything else out from underneath them at this stage of the game. But moving forward, I absolutely think this is something. But of course, talk to me tomorrow because who knows, I may sleep on this one. God only knows what I'll say.
Thanks, Christine.
Chris?
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Dr. Gleason. Thank you for that. And we talked about this the other day, and I've kind of wrestled with it a little bit. And I guess some of the questions that I had, which I don't know if we necessarily have the answers to, do you know? I mean, are they? If it's just on Zoom, I would assume that they're going to have a better availability to accept, more kids. into these programs. Do you know if that's the case?
I don't know if that's the case, but I could certainly get that question answered. So, and that would, of course, be positive for students, but we only have limited funds. And I did email already to ask what the tuition rates would be. I haven't, because it's not listed on their website this year. So I haven't gotten that information back yet, but potentially they could have more students.
Yeah, I mean, that was, sort of led to my second question is, with it being, Zoom, I'm sure there's ways to dance on Zoom and, act on Zoom and things like that. But part of me wonders if they're going to have, a rich fulfillment of, the course on Zoom. I know that we have our Board of Education meetings on Zoom, and I'm not fulfilled with Zoom as much as I would be if we were in person. But at any rate, those were the things, and I do agree with Christine that, I do think that if we were going to look at this and say, hey, the budget's tough this year, we certainly should have brought that forth prior to, kids applying, because that's a very, very tough call. I believe. So I looked at it and I thought about it a couple ways, and also Christine, just, sort of to let you know too, we sort of went down that same line of thought that you just did with, with the Academy for Performing and Visual Arts. Right. So we talked about that, and, getting a good report on, how many students we have on track there. And, I think that that's something that's come up a few different times at these meetings. And I don't know necessarily whether, we've gotten the full report that we need as a board to really develop a strategy going forward for that. So those were my thoughts on it.
Russell?
Yes, thank you, Ralph. I think some of the same thoughts between what was said with Christine and Chris. We've budgeted money. We should stay the course, I think, for these children at this point in time. And I would ask the committee to dive deeper and come back with a recommendation to the full board later in the year as to next steps. But to not move forward up to the budgeted amount or below the budgeted amount, if there's only 7 that end up moving forward, I think would be inappropriate at this point.
Thank you, Mr. Gartz.
Joe?
Yeah, Russell just kind of stole my thunder. I was going to say almost the exact same thing. This was money that's budgeted. We knew what it was. We talked about it last year. My thinking would be we have to make a decision. What happens if, I think we need to go forward 100%. There's no doubt about that. The question becomes is if we get 20 people accepted and the tuition's $1,000 and it's $20,000 and we've only budgeted 15. Do we do the same thing we did last year, which would then be to increase it and find the extra money, or do we explain it very, very clearly to the parents that we have 15,000? So if only 8 or 10 of you get in and it's $1,000, you're going to get a free ride. If there's going to be more children accepted, we can only spend the 15, which I think is a compromise this year. That's what we upped it from last year. So I think that would be the thing. We would take the amount of people that were accepted, divided by 15,000, and then you would say, okay, we could pay 80% of it, and then the parents would have to pay the rest, which would be I think.
Joe, you're frozen again.
Mr. Hall, thank you. My understanding is that Monmouth County Arts, the reason that they call to confirm if we've budgeted funds in September, whenever they had called late September, is because they do communicate that to the parents. We then follow up with typically a letter stating that as well. And then the Monmouth County Arts actually creates the invoices and does, the math around the district subsidy if it in fact goes to a number that's above what we budgeted and tuition is not fully funded. So I think that's really my point today, not so much about not budgeting, but looking at what's happened over the last couple of years where we continue to rise above that budgeted amount. And, the board's position this year in staying the course with that, I think would be wise.
Lisa, does every school district get charged the same amount?
They do, Mr. Gartz. They do.
Ken?
Yeah, we have an honors visual art pathway, and from grade 9, 10, 11, and 12. And it includes several electives each year. And we thought in the discussion that we should be looking at our program to see where it can be enhanced. That's A. B, there are other fees involved in this. Application fee, and there's some other fee. And it becomes very controversial. And we have no control over who gets accepted. So we have no control. So we sit and listen to people come to the podium and attack. And I just think we got to give this some thought and look at our own program, see if that can be enhanced, which I no doubt in my mind it can be. And if we're going to do this year, because the kids have already applied, I got no problem with that. But I would never go beyond what we have budgeted. Forget about that. There's nothing you can do about it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Anybody else?
Yeah, I think this is why we wanted to bring it back to everybody. The comments are great because it helps us all to open our minds and think about this differently. And to that point, I don't know the answer to this question that I have, which is not really directly related to arts, but along the lines of GT. AP course, you have to pay to take the test. Who pays that? The school or the students and the families? Does anybody know?
Yes. I believe we pay for the AP exams. I believe that's district funded.
Okay, so
That was something that changed a couple years ago.
Yeah.
As a clarification, that's if you score, I believe, a 3, 4, or 5, correct? Or 4 or 5? You're reimbursed if you score. You meet that requirement.
I think it's really important because what we want is for our students to all have opportunities regardless of their area of interest or expertise. But a lot of factors have come out just because we've had this conversation.
Adam?
I figured I'd chime in since I was the only one that didn't say anything, but I agree with most of the other comments where we're already on course. We've already made that commitment. I think at this point, any other changes are going to be detrimental to the program as a whole. But going forward, I mean, $15,000 is a lot of money. We can develop our own programs, especially for a limited group of children that are could be considered a GNT type program. I think we need to develop our own capabilities as well as our students because it helps everybody, all the students, not just the GNT ones as a whole. So we should look at it during budget time and see how we can really, really get the best bang for our buck, not just for us, but for the students as well, all of them.
I agree with you that I think one of the things we can do with this information and looking at the last 3 years, looking at what are the interest level of these students that are considered G&T, and what are the areas that they're looking to enrich, and what do we offer and what don't we offer. And as you say, Mr. Nasser, expanding that so it's inclusive for all students at the secondary level, not just G&T students.
Chris?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Adam. I'm sorry.
Can I just ask, have we talked to the students? Why are they going to this program? Are there things that we're not able to provide, or that the Monmouth County program has a advantage over what we have right now?
Well, I think that one of the things that they offer, I think that conversation would be meaningful if we're comparing apples to apples. So if they're going there instead of, or maybe they're taking the course here and then they're also going there, but what is it that they are getting from that program? I think that would be an important conversation. I think the answers around the courses we're not offering are purely that we're not offering those courses. One of the feathers in their cap there are that, they have equipment. It's not necessarily vocational, but they have a filmmaking program with, high-end equipment for filmmaking. While we do 4 years of television production, we don't offer a filmmaking course with that kind of equipment. We have been looking at photography and digital photography because there has been interest from students, and that was one of the projected areas for potentially within the VPA. But it would be a good question to ask for students who go for visual arts, because we do have a very strong visual arts program at the secondary level. And perhaps it's because they want an additional layer because it's truly their passion. So it's not that they're not taking it here, but it's that they love that particular area of study. And to them, it's worth leaving the premises one afternoon a week. They are expected, they have an informal contract that they have to keep up with all of their work that they're missing on that one day a week, the couple hours that they miss. They have to keep their attendance up. So these are typically very motivated students and students who are in very good standing. So I'm not sure of the exact answer, but I think it'd be worth finding out.
Adam?
I
Sorry. Go ahead, Russell.
I'm sorry. I just think this topic, we could debate this for hours tonight. I think you got your answer about tonight's budget recommendation. The committee has to go back and dive deeper, come back to the board with a recommendation. Otherwise, we'll be here forever talking about it.
Agreed.
Understood.
And I'm very sorry just to throw this in the end, but can we have like an exit survey, for the students that go, go there this year? So that we can have, some better guidance and we're not just wondering, why they're going. I'm sure that it's prestigious and they probably make great friends throughout the whole county and, different things like that, which is, all exciting and, benefits of the program. But I think that we need that to come from the students themselves, if we have kids who are accepted and go to the program this year.
Sure, I think that's a good idea.
Adam, did you have anything?
Dr. Gleason, you had mentioned that there were other programs and other resources that are similar to this program for those types of students. And I know we have a partnership with Brookdale, correct? Mm-hmm. Do they offer these types of programs and partnerships? Obviously, the intermediate level students may not rise to that level of foundational knowledge needed to get in as a prerequisite. But is there opportunities in that area?
There could be. We do have, as you say, a dual enrollment agreement with Brookdale. It depends upon the course. It's definitely only available for high school students right now. Interestingly, this program also offers a 4-fee credit with Brookdale, but why would you do that if you're already paying the tuition here and then you have to pay the credit fee also, rather than just taking it directly with Georgia or Brookdale if they offered it. So I don't know that that would be advisable to do that unless they do not offer the course at Brookdale and the student can get Brookdale credit. And that does seem to be the case with some of their high school credits. I don't know that any of the students who've gone through the program, if they've gone through for that crediting at the college level, that's something that the parents would be responsible for in terms of paying for that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Mr. Krupa, would you like to move on to the next couple of updates?
Yeah, and just to be sure that we are finished with that first one, we're going ahead and we're going to look for the future. That's what this, and the future means that the committee will come up with some recommendations based on some of the things that were suggested tonight. I like Chris' idea of an exit survey. That's great. So everybody knows what we're doing. Great. Yeah, we have those other updates. Thank you.
We did. We had Mr. Lee come to the committee meeting and provide an update on where we were with regard to technology. We were really looking at specifically during the pandemic and the rise of the virtual classroom in all grade levels. And we had apprised the board that there were some issues, especially at the elementary level, around sort of overloading the Chromebooks with all of the ed tech that the teachers were using. And so we had expedited an order for 50 laptops for instructional purposes. Those laptops did make it to the district. And I believe Mr. Lee is assessing additional needs where the Chromebooks do not suffice for virtual instruction. We also did bring in, I believe, 400 iPads for our kindergarten and first grade students, which are much more developmentally appropriate for our youngest learners at the elementary level. And Mr. Lee also provided an update with regard to some of the security around technology. As you know, we've been experiencing some challenges there. So we've added on some additional layers of monitoring, protection, and firewall protection. Mr. Krupa, I'm not sure in your notes if you have anything additional to that update.
No, not to what you've said, but it was kind of like a sidebar an additional conversation at the end of our meeting where we just want to encourage parents, everybody, to continue to be vigilant about your children's use of technology being appropriate, safe, because even prior to COVID and all this virtual learning, that is an important life lesson. And, you know, we've had programs in the past where we've highlighted that. I personally have attended prosecutor and Wall Police Department workshops. So it's not something to be frightened of, but it's just a reminder to be diligent with your checks and balances and how you use technology in your home. And we did have a nice reminder letter from the middle school this week. So it was very serendipitous. So I don't want to take any more of the time on technology because you have two other items, right, Dr. Gleason?
And I do, and I will dovetail back to what you're mentioning about the parent support for screen time with students. I'm going to dovetail back to that in the SEL update because I do have some further information to provide the board. Are there any other questions from the board with regard to technology updates before we move on to special ed updates?
Lisa, was there any discussion about future needs from technology going forward in terms of curriculum, either this year or into the next school year?
Yeah, one of the areas that I know is under discussion right now still comes back to the idea of interactive whiteboards. And, you know, one of the areas that we've had to quickly kind of mitigate is getting document cameras. I couldn't think of the word of it. So that teachers could project what they're using, sort of tangible items. So if they were writing something or they had a text or a hard copy of something, they can put that under the document camera, and that could be projected both to the students in the class as well as the students in the virtual setting. I know that Mrs. Mangan, as an educator herself, talked a lot about how we've moved away from that kind of technology around document cameras, and how interactive whiteboards where you can project everything and you can do quick uploads from your phone. And it's a much more advanced technology that's more interactive, and it also has a bigger price tag. And prior to COVID, Mr. Lee and I had attended an Epson conference, and we had identified one or two whiteboards. Brightlink was the one that was sort of the front runner, but they are expensive. I think that it would behoove us under Mr. Lee's sort of guidance to develop a technology plan that includes, if that is going to be the recommended technology, to get rid of projectors and document cameras, to put together a 5-year plan that we can roll those out, by grade level, by grade band, because it is an expenditure for the district, but there is high value, and the longevity in those types of technologies are much better than the old projectors and the document cameras. And in fact, even something as simple as a light bulb that will blow out in a projector, the new systems have endless life on their light bulbs. So that's something that can shut a document camera down or a projector down for a long time. We had a situation at the intermediate school where the projector bulbs had reached their end of life, and they no longer made those projector bulbs for those projectors. So we have to make decisions about, do we go get a new projector that has a compatible bulb, or do we start looking at what is more appropriate technology?
I just want to add that I've been working with Mr. Lee regarding his draft of a technology plan, and we're right now looking at infrastructure to support advanced platforms. So more to come on this in the future.
So I know it's a tough ask, but I would ask, from a finance and facilities committee point of view, a very, rough outline so we can start thinking of where to go with it all would be helpful. Estimated costs, and technology changes on a dime, right? So if we have to roll it in over 5 years, my guess is that the people that got it next year are going to be, the people that got it in year 5 are going to be out of date in year 7. It's going to almost be a waste of investment in some capacity. So I don't know how we get the teachers' involvement in and other people's viewpoints, but I think we need to move quickly for next year's budget as to whatever we recommend, because you'll hear in a few minutes about what we've been looking at in finance, or just started to look at in finance and facilities, and trying to keep things tight.
Yep.
If I may, just really quickly, I utilize this technology in my classroom on a daily basis. It's basically like an interactive television, but it's got a component that it's connected to my Chromebook. So I'm able to project what I'm seeing on my Chromebook, like our Pearson app, for instance, for math, and I can use my finger. I don't even have to use a pen. It's very user friendly. Prior to COVID and social distancing, it was very interactive, having the students be able to come up and work on it, and it gives students exactly what they have on their books to what's up on the screen. So the modeling is exact, and they're able to follow pretty easily. So it is very user friendly, and there's no glare. Sometimes with the projectors, you'll see with the bulbs, there'll be a glare from the windows. You don't get that with this type of technology. It is definitely something that I would recommend for the district moving forward. I know in the elementary and the lower grades, it would be probably key to roll out with the younger students prior and work its way up. But I definitely think it's something where the district needs to go at this point with upgrading their technology in the classroom. There's only so much, the kids are on their screens, on their Chromebooks all day long. You also need some time to put the Chromebook down and also have some interactive with teaching and modeling.
Just a comment on the bulbs. Very expensive and they don't last long and they're hard to get.
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct. Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on to special ed updates. The conversation, Carol Duffy, our Director of Special Services, came to the committee meeting, and really what we were asking for from Mrs. Duffy was to provide us an update on where we were with regard to supports for students with IEPs, and our conversation was really centered primarily around during the time of COVID. And it's been very challenging trying to match the legally required supports for students with all of the different settings that are in place, and then matching the staffing needs with those IEP needs. So we've had to get very creative in terms of working with parents and with teachers to make sure that we have those supports in place. We've, as you know, hired some additional special ed staff to provide some of those supports primarily for our virtual students. We've also had some of our teachers, we have at various grade levels, we have teachers that are providing supports outside of the traditional day, which is at the elementary level is 9 to 1. We may have those teachers providing some additional support time at 2 o'clock from 2 to 3. And they're getting paid for that time because it's outside of their instructional day. So we've had to get creative around making sure that we are meeting the needs of all of those students. And I think that it's an ongoing situation. So, we might think that we have everything in check one week, and then we may have some student needs that arise or a change in IEP that requires some additional supports. And so we're working on that. Mrs. Duffy is working on that on a regular basis. Mr. Krupa, did you have anything additional from your notes on the update that you wanted to share?
No, I'm looking, I don't see anything other than that. I know that's for the social emotional learning thing.
Yep.
Yeah, it was just because you mentioned both Jolie for the technology update and Carol Duffy were guests at that meeting, and I just want to say publicly in front of everybody that it was very helpful and nice that they took their time out to come and help us process.
Absolutely.
It's about the rest of the committee because you guys helped out with that last one and some things.
Mrs. Duffy's conversation did really dovetail into SEL as the Director of Special Services, and she works closely with our child study teams and guidance department, and looking at what are we doing to meet the needs of our students, our staff, and also parents during this time. And we know that since March, there have been so many voids and gaps that are happening, not just academically, but I would say as important, if not more importantly, in students' social and emotional lives, or lack thereof, in these virtual settings where they're not in a traditional classroom. So we've been having ongoing conversations, and we've been looking at SEL, or social emotional learning, from kind of a three-prong approach. We look at what are the supports that are in place for students, what are the supports that are in place for staff, and what are the supports that are in place for parents. With regard to supports that are in place for students, we have counseling services, not just in-person face-to-face counseling services, but we have counselors checking in on students who are home in virtual settings. We have counselors stepping up their check-ins for students who may be quarantined and are feeling isolated outside of their peer groups during quarantine, or students who may be sick during this time. So counselors have provided a really key role in some of those supports, as well as members of the child study team. We have teachers that have worked on developing teacher check-ins. I may have mentioned this the last time, a pretty common practice in a classroom is that a teacher may have kids sit down, and as they're getting settled in the classroom, they would have what we call a do now. And the do now might be a quick write on something related academically to what they've been studying, or it could be a review in math, and it's usually less than 5 minutes. What we have provided to teachers are some resources around these kind of quick check-ins that a student can do a quick write, or a little Google Doc or a Google form that the teacher can get that lets the teacher know how they're feeling around this situation. And we were able to provide some of those resources at the beginning of the school year. Our counseling teams have really beefed up their websites. They've, in some cases, made their websites are now interactive with avatars that look like the counselors. They come into the interactive counseling office so that the students who are in virtual settings can also feel like if they have to kind of walk down to the counselor's office, they can have an interactive experience, and then the counselor will call that student. We've had ongoing support for staff, and it started, as I mentioned last month, with the first in-service day being a self-care for educators. And I think it's really important that we make sure that our vision for social emotional learning and mental health and wellness includes our educators and staff who, to use probably an overused analogy, that we have to make sure we put the oxygen mask on ourselves first before we can help others. So we started with that in-service day, self-care for educators. We now have some walking clubs and meditation clubs after students leave and teachers are still in class, or I'm sorry, students are still in schools during professional development time. We had all of our school family liaison counselors. We had a meeting last month and another meeting this morning. They have put together a really nice plan, mostly being funded through Title IV, which is a federal ESSA fund that supports social emotional learning. Some of the purchases there include a curriculum for mindfulness that is 36 weeks of really easy to follow lessons with illustrations. I had a chance to hold the curriculum today, look at the curriculum. It has beautiful illustrations that teachers can see how to do this. Teachers can incorporate it in any classroom. It doesn't have to be health phys ed. It can be a teacher taking 5 minutes in his or her class to do a breathing exercise, a mindfulness exercise, and getting kids to sort of focus and some coping strategies. So we looked at that, and the counselors had vetted that curriculum out, and we're looking to purchase that and provide professional development for the teachers. The counselors also came together with a district theme and activity about what they're calling the Positivity Depot. And because we're being bombarded with so much often negative messaging from the media and unfortunately from our healthcare agencies with regard to COVID data, they're trying to build a site at all of the schools where teachers can contribute positive messages. The counselors are providing a lot of resources around coping, grief strategies, but there's also just some fun, light resources in there, and teachers can also just share some positive things going on in their worlds. So it started at the high school, and in a meeting today with the counselors, they're going to expand the Wall Township Positivity Depot to all of the schools. And I imagine that that while it may be an indirect impact on students, that I would imagine that's the kind of activity that finds its way down to include students as well. The last piece of that is support for parents. And Mr. Krupa, this dovetails with our conversation around technology. Now more than ever, students are on their devices. They're on their devices for instruction and learning. They're on their devices because their social circles have narrowed. And so in some cases where we were trying to get kids off of devices maybe a year ago, now we've had no choice but to increase their time. Last year, we had a parent university that we partnered with the Wall Township Police Department with the Detective of Internet Crimes and a company called Screenagers. And the Wall Township Police Department put together a really nice presentation on internet safety and internet crimes and awareness. And then we followed that with it was a 1-hour documentary called Screenagers. And it was a sort of a real life documentary of a family struggling with children who were spending a lot of time on screen and how they've learned to partner with their students, some of the agreements that they created around screen time, some of the challenges and successes. And after that parent university, I did have a number of parents call and ask, will we show that again? Will we show that again? I did reach out to Screenagers because we're in this virtual setting and we can't invite everybody into the auditorium for a movie night again. But they do offer a couple of different avenues to rescreen Screenagers, the documentary again. We can host a live streaming event where any parent who wants to sign up would be given the link, and they would watch it on their home devices. And then there is a live Q&A that's moderated by Screenagers, the company, at the end, just like they would do in a live event. The other option is for us to purchase a 2-week link, and we can put that link on the website and share it out with parents, and it's available to them for 2 weeks. The cost of that program was upwards of $700 or $800, if I'm not mistaken, for the license for the viewing. So I think that it had a direct impact on families, and I think it would be well worth looking to partner with them and providing that in a virtual format for families again. That's all I have tonight. Mr. Krupa, is there anything else that I haven't covered or you wanted to add to?
Lisa, could I just say something real fast? I
Sure.
think it's great that the social emotional learning is a topic of focus for both staff and students. As somebody that works in a special needs environment on the business side of things, our program follows the sanctuary model of care. It's a trauma-informed method. And we've indoctrinated 3 questions into every meeting that we start with for our staff. Can be a little annoying, but it's very helpful when you need it to be. And the 3 questions are, how are you feeling today? And you can't just say great. You have to use some kind of descriptive term. What are your goals for today? And who can help you with that? And it just gives you that little pause. So I think it's great that you're doing that. Everybody needs that. And it's obviously more important now. The other thing I want to say is I just recently read an article about a school that is requiring their teachers to make sure that they have one-on-one conversations with every one of their students scheduled over the next, X amount of weeks, as much as it's feasible to do, because they're finding that their teachers are only communicating via the computer, and it's becoming a big issue. So while they're in school for those 2 or 3 days, the teachers have to find a little bit of time or use class time or whatever they can do to make sure that it's a one-on-one, face-to-face. In the high school, young adult to adult conversation. In the grammar schools, a different conversation. I thought that was valuable. So just a thought.
Thank you, Mr. Gartz. Would you mind sending me those 3 questions if you don't mind? And that just kind of a link to what you're doing. I think that would be great to share with the teachers as part of that kind of do now that we were talking about a few minutes ago. So that's very helpful. Thank you.
Adam?
This is a follow-up question, probably from a couple of weeks ago. Are there any updates, or did anything come up that obviously we can share publicly regarding the cyber attacks that we went under? Have we fully mitigated that? I mean, can we give reassurance that we're good to go going forward?
Dr. Handerhan, did you want to comment?
Yes, we are still working with our our provider. We have installed the new firewall. The installation went very, very well. I can tell you from a user and in district, the internet service has been much, much improved. Since we have provided additional security protocols and an upgraded firewall. And with respect to the technology plan, this is something that is being looked at in a bigger sense to really look at our infrastructure and our cyber and our security measures to ensure that we have exactly what we need so that we can build upon the foundation.
Okay, so we won't be budgeting or have a budget for Bitcoin next year, anything like that. Good to hear. Just keep us in the loop. That's all I ask.
Well, I know it's certainly on the loop because technology is not cheap.
Okay, that concludes my report. And Mr. Krupa, if there's anything else that you'd like me to report on?
No, we wish you the best of luck and congratulations on your new position once again. And I'm waiting for that BAT number. Yeah, I like the idea of the positivity depot that you mentioned. It actually encompasses a lot of what Russell said in terms of every child needing a advocate and a check-in. And it is one of the things that idealistically is mentioned in many programs, but it really is that person-to-person contact that is so important for all students, whatever their academic standing is. And I encourage those that are virtual, like my boys have been, if you're finding difficulties at home, that you reach out to the school, because the positivity depot only goes as far as sometimes the 4 walls. So it takes a village. Not lines right now. What I mean by that is it's not time to draw a line saying, well, this is your responsibility, that's her responsibility. No, it's all of our responsibilities right now. So if you're not getting something in any of these areas that are mentioned, please, and I know people like to sometimes say, well, I heard the board members say that, but I'm only saying it because I believe that when you ask, you get. And people, maybe not the way you want it or always in the form that you think it should be, but people in this district overall are good and they want to help. They're doing a good job. It's the best job that they can. They're under the same performance hindrances that we all are. So while complaints are good and sometimes necessary, stop drawing the lines. That's what I'm going to say.
Thank you, Mr. Krupa.
Thanks, Andy. Okay, moving on, Mr. Gartz, finance and facilities.
Thank you, Ralph. The finance and facilities agenda is, we've adopted a methodology for the last 3 months of following the agenda of looking at things in the past. So we'll have updates, as you see, in the first 2 or 3 items of what we've done in the recent past, looking at our current challenges and then always having a strategic discussion. So Brian's going to walk us through this agenda. Committee members can chime in as needed, as I will, to bring you through these 9 items.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is the operations work orders. And the first few items are standing items that we look to include on each F&F agenda. But the first one being the operations work order summary report. The F&F committee has asked operations to provide this report on a monthly basis in an attempt to identify problem areas in the district and to keep the committee informed. Mr. Moretta reviewed the summary report with the committee with the number of work orders that were completed last month being over 200, 44 are in progress and 3 of them were pending. Any questions with regard to the work order summary report?
Brian, the only thing I would say is it's our intention on the committee is as things bubble up in our F&F, meetings to bring to the whole board things that we see as challenges. Thankfully, up to this point, we've seen good progress and nothing to alert the full board to.
Yes. The next item is our enterprise accounts update for the year to date or the month of October that was finished. The first one is our food service program. And that is an attachment to the agenda for the month. The food service program was profitable $46,000. That is mainly driven by the reimbursables we receive as part of the child nutrition program, with the waiver in place for all students being eligible for meals. So year to date, we are in the black, over 20,000, almost 21,000. Compared that to last year at this time, we had a decent year for the month of October. For the month, we were just under 30,000 as opposed to 46,000, but we were only in the black by 7,000. So we're off to a very good start with the food service program for this school year. Questions on food service? Also, just to make you aware, we're sending out notices to, there's going to be correspondence in the backpack this week advising our families with regard to the program, that the waiver program is not ending at the end of the calendar year, December 31st, but it has been extended to the end of the school year, June 30th. We've communicated that at board meetings. That is going home to all the parents. We are also encouraging parents that qualify for free and reduced, and even though this year families were not required to apply in order to be eligible for the free and reduced program in the current school year, we are still encouraging families to submit the application if they do qualify, because where this is going to be important is the application process doesn't come out to the start of the school year. So the first month, possibly the first month and a half, families or students that were part of the program or qualified in the prior year are carried over. It's part of an extension that's part of the program. So if you are taking advantage of the waiver program this year, you're not completing the application or submitting the application for free and reduced, and they end the waiver program at the end of this school year, well, at the start of next year, there'll be no carryover for those families. So we're sending out notices to all the families that have participated last year that we carried over this year. And we're also sending in the spring, we'll send out notices to families as well in the event they become eligible to sign up in the current school year so that they are eligible at the start of next school year. And that is provided in more detail in the correspondence that we're sending to the families. Any questions on the food service program? Okay, with regard to the WRAP program, again, we provide a revenue expense report, very similar in nature to the food service program. Not unexpected, the WRAP program has less participation than in the current year. We had stricter guidelines which required additional staffing. Those guidelines in the current year or for the current month, November, have been reduced based on the number of students that or number of participants that are able to be supervised by a site coordinator or by a group leader, which would be the title in our program. They've increased that to a 1 to 15 ratio as opposed to a 1 to 10. They had restrictions where a group leader couldn't go from one group to another. They've relaxed that restriction as well. So it's giving us the ability to be more affordable in the program and in order for the program to be competitive. But the month of October had a loss of just under $7,000, and the year to date, we're in the negative $34,000. We are projecting that the month of November is going to be closer to a break even and hopefully be slightly profitable. because of the reduction in staffing needs and the reduced number of student days in the month of November. Any questions on the RAP program?
Brian, I would just throw in that the committee is watching this closely. It's important that both RAP and food service obviously break even. Otherwise, we have to move money from the general funds to support them and bring them to neutral. And so, we're in month 2. And as we proceed the next few months, we'll continue to watch where certainly RAP goes and recommend necessary adjustments as needed to try to bring us close to break even, if not better, through the end of the year.
Absolutely. Okay. Facility use permits was a staple on the F&F report on a monthly basis. We've kind of removed it as we essentially closed school back in March. However, I just wanted to have it on the agenda to make sure if the board wanted to have any discussion with regard to the use of our facilities by any outside groups. Currently, we are not approving any facility use permits in the district, and I just wanted to make sure that that was being discussed at a public board meeting, and we can review them as we move forward. But board policy is any permit request that is for a duration for more than 4 months has to be brought to the Board of Education and approved by the board. We currently do not have any of those requests. The next one that would be coming up would probably be the basketball program, although that may be a moot point with the new restrictions going into place. But I just wanted to know if there was any if the board wanted to have any discussion with regard to the use of our facilities and our current procedure in not approving any or allowing outside groups into our building.
Brian, or Tracy, does the Restart Recovery Plan have any statement as to outside use?
We have been using the phase 1 where we have not been using permitting outside groups to use our facilities, because what the focus has been the custodial services inside our own building to clean up. And also we have not moved forward with that because cleaning is a big priority for us right now with the schools.
So I can appreciate that. And I'm not saying that we should open up the schools to the general groups that we've always done without some edits, but I think it's important to consider the mental health of the young kids who need an outlet to play some basketball or whatever it might be. So if there's increased charges that come with the consideration, I would like it to be a discussion point rather than an absolute no, but that's just my opinion.
Okay, I can tell you that some of the younger children, their athletic programs, they're using various facilities throughout Wall Township. So many of the programs are running already.
Good.
Dr. Hanrahan, that's outside it's running, correct? Not inside.
I'm sorry?
It's running outside, not inside, correct?
Well, for example, I do know that there is a young student wrestling program in the town that is running, and through the intention is to run through this winter months at a non-Wall Township facility. So I do know that. I saw a flyer pursuant to that.
And just to piggyback a little bit off what Russell was saying, if we did have something in one of our gyms, what is the maximum amount of people that could be in there? Because I know, I mean, the numbers are all over the place. We have a football stadium, we can't have more than 500 people, for instance.
I think the new rules are 25% capacity, but I'm not familiar with the capacity of how many people we can fit in our high school gym, for example. I don't know that number. At this point, I would have to ask Tom Radu to find out what our capacity is, and it's considerably less what is permitted at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Going into the winter season.
Ralph, that's a good point. It might not be feasible to do it, but I think we should explore it, in some capacity, just to, give the look that we want to help, and just if it doesn't add up because of the numbers and the rules, then so be it. But I think we would want to be good neighbors and good stewards of the buildings and the kids' time outside of school, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you, and if it comes down to it, where unfortunately maybe it's just the kids playing with their coach and no spectators, I think that's better than them not playing at all, as long as it can be done in a safe and healthy way. Adam, you had something?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak to this a little bit because I've spent an extensive amount of time on this subject in the past 2 or 3 weeks. I believe the answer is, and Mr. Scarillo can probably back this up, but it's 25 people inside, or 125 if the event calls for more. So if say you have a wrestling tournament and there's more than 25 people, but they're all related to the direct the event between coaches, players, the officials, as long as there's no spectators, you can go up to 125. At least that's my understanding.
That's accurate.
But also within this, and this is where I want to rely on Mr. Scarillo again, within Executive Order 187, paragraphs 4 and 5 at the end, there's explicit directions within that executive order that we can't put hurdles or otherwise throw red tape in the way of blocking these types of events from occurring, as long as they do comply with the other executive order requirements and the ones previous. So I would ask for some legal interpretation of what the rights of folks that do want to have, say, a basketball tournament is, and where it may butt up against our policy that we have in place, so that if we do have to make any adjustments, in light of, this is a pretty rare situation, but to build off of Russell's point, the mental health, the getting back to a degree of normalcy, especially for kids in foundational level rec programs that build up into middle school and high school programs. Losing a year can be detrimental, and even if it is just them coming into play and develop their skills without the benefit of spectators or parents or whatnot, that still has to be on the table, and it is required of us. At least that's my understanding from that executive order. And again, I would defer to Mr. Scarillo for his legal interpretation, but it's pretty plain in the text.
I would prefer not to weigh in on all the exceptions tonight, but I certainly would like to address it from all the issues, because Dr. Handrahan was correct also. There is a method by which you get 25% of the capacity into the gym. But Adam was right on target with what he was explaining about the 12 people and the expansion to 125. But there's a number of different executive orders that kind of piece it all together into a mosaic. So I'd like to just address all of them.
Everybody good? Mr. Swing?
Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda is the Wall High School South Gym floor. However, Superintendent Dr. Hanrahan had provided an update at the beginning of the meeting that the report from Dr. Lynch's firm will be available on the website, and that the district board is holding a town hall style meeting on November 16th at 7 p.m. That'll be virtual, correct, Dr. Hanrahan? Be a virtual meeting, and it'll be a town hall. Will not be an advertised Board of Education meeting, but it'll be there to, address the report being provided by Dr. Lynch. With regard to continuing with facilities, in a current project is our communication system upgrade that is included in the current 2021 school year. And this is to expand our PA systems in all of our schools to address areas where the communication is not considered sufficient or to the standard that the district would like. So we're looking to expand the communication system in all the schools by adding additional speakers and replacing some of the speakers with horns. And this would be both inside and outside the building. For the facility construction end of the project, the budget included $205,000. We've looked at varying ways to procure, a contract for these services. We looked at state contract. We looked at cooperatives within the state, which there are no state contract or local or state cooperatives that would be able to provide the service. We did identify a national cooperative that we would be able to procure the services. However, because of the size of the project being over $200,000, the committee is of the opinion that this is something that should go out to bid, which we will be moving forward with, preparing specifications, bid specifications, and going out to bid, and then also having construction administration. Requested a proposal from our architects, Speed's architectural group. It's a proposal on verbals in the amount of just under $16,000. We're waiting on a formal proposal, and we are looking to have that on next week's agenda at the business meeting for the board to take action on and awarding. We are planning to try to have the project scheduled so that we are awarding at the business meeting in December. But if we are not able to meet that tight timeline, then we would be looking to award at the January business meeting. But the recommendation is that we move forward with an award to the architect to prepare the bid specifications, do bid review and recommendation, and construction administration. Again, it'll be in the amount of $15,900. Questions, comments? Okay. Custodial and maintenance staffing needs. This is, an outgrowth of some of the comments from prior board meetings, something the F&F committee also discussed at the beginning of October with our facilities manager, Mr. Moretta, especially with the additional workload and the additional detail being provided by the custodial and maintenance staff, throughout the district. And the committee has asked Mr. Moretta to provide a proposal to the committee for additional staff, specifically at the primary school, but also additional staff, whether it be on a permanent basis or on a floating or substitute basis, to address temporary vacancies or absences within the department because of the current situation and the cleaning procedures that we have in place. The district or the custodial staff no longer has the ability to address daily attendance absences with what would be commonly referred to as pickups, or with the staff, the remaining staff in the building picking up an area due to the absence of one or more employees. We have advertised to increase the number of substitutes that we have available, and we are looking to address possible substitute rates, but we're also looking at hiring floaters for the purposes of covering those daily absences within the buildings. And a proposal will be coming from Mr. Moretta, the facilities manager, to the committee for next month.
I just want to add to Brian's statement. We asked Mr. Moretta, there are formulas and metrics to calculate these types of things. So we asked him to put together a more accurate number by running the numbers. We basically asked him to do the math and get back to us with some proposals.
And Adam, I would just follow your comment up to say that we looked at it from a bunch of ways: the mathematical count, the circumstances that we're under, the loss of manpower on various days of the week, et cetera, and just trying to meet the expectation that we're all under. And it's under certain different times now than it would have been maybe 12 months or 18 months ago. So we're looking at it from all the right ways to try to make the best informed decision as to what steps can we afford to move forward and enhance the the coverage that's necessary.
And just to piggyback off what Russell and Adam both said, one of the things, and the simplest way to look at it, is that, talking about formulas and everything else, but we are putting up barriers in a lot of different places. In the offices, for instance, on desks in classrooms where students might not be exactly 6 feet apart for social distancing, and all those surfaces have to be cleaned. So you take just one desk, for instance, that has it on it, you're talking about 6 pieces of area that have to be cleaned individually, front and back. So that's going to take additional time. And we don't want any corners cut. So that's something that, you know, one of the things that we took into consideration on that.
Additionally, the committee requested to have on the agenda the nursing staffing needs. I would ask this as a personnel issue, if Dr. Handerhan wants to provide some insight with regard to our discussion.
Certainly. One of the nursing staffing concerns is along the same lines as the custodial needs. The demands of school nurses has grown considerably this year. The required, you know, from required hours to required additional requirements, different reporting mechanisms that are now in place, in addition to an already busy health office where, you know, immunizations are tracked and screenings take place. So we have been looking at different ways to support our nurses. And we're exploring different pathways. I've met with the head nurses and their supervisors to drill down to see exactly what the best support is needed and where it is and how we can accomplish that. I'm working on that right now with the team, but I also do want to share that we have advertised once again for substitute nurses in the district so that we can provide extra support in the immediate sense through substitutes with for our nursing staff who is you know, working incredibly hard with contact tracing, notifications, quarantine restrictions, and taking care of our kids. So a special thank you out to them.
Any comments or discussion with regard to their staffing? Okay. Next item is our medical benefit stop loss renewal. On a calendar basis, our stop loss renewal is up each year. Even though our fiscal year is July through June, and most of the contracts with regard to medical benefits or our health benefit program is also July through June. However, our stop loss, because it was an outgrowth of when we used to be in the state health benefits back in 2011, we always maintained that our stop loss renewal was January 1. And each time we've looked to adjust or modify that so that it did have a July 1 start, it was always cost prohibitive. One of the benefits of having it on a mid-year cycle with regard to our budget is going into, we're going to be doing the renewal for a year, and as we're preparing next year's budget, we'll know exactly what the cost will be for half the year, and then our projection is only based on the second half of the year, where there's a number of things within the medical benefits and within the budget itself that we are basing the budget on projections and not actual numbers or contracts in place. And this is one that we have the ability to do that. However, Brown & Brown does market our stop loss, and you know, to give a little bit more description, what our stop loss insurance does for us is we are self-insured. So we pay the claims of the members enrolled in the plan. However, we have a limited exposure with regard to those claims. So we cover the claims up to $125,000 for an employee for the year. And then the stop loss insurance will cover those costs above that stop loss amount. Additionally, there is a stop loss on the aggregate of all claims up to a percentage basis, but we don't typically come near that aggregate number, and it's only applied on a individual basis. However, Brown & Brown puts that out to market. They currently are out to 14 providers or 14 carriers. It is up in, the renewal will be for January 1, so we'll have a recommendation at the December committee meetings for action to be taken at the December business meeting. But they are currently obtaining quotes and negotiating that renewal for the district. Questions, concerns, comments? Okay. Last is our budget planning for, believe it or not, the 2021-22 school year. We are getting started. The committee's already discussing it and have it on the agenda. And where we start from is what does the budget look like with a 0% tax increase and the possible impacts that we can anticipate with regard to state aid, and what's state aid going to look like next year, and is it going to look, you know, the same as it is this current year, or should we be anticipating, you know, a reduced state aid amount or a drastically reduced state aid amount? And you know, looking at a tax levy with a 0% increase is difficult with all the contractual increases that we are obligated to include in the budget. So that's a difficult task to meet with regard to the zero budget, but it is a starting point and it is early in the process. And we are going to move forward from that point forward. Mr. Garth, did you want to provide any additional information with regard to the budget?
No, I think you gave it a good summary. I think the purpose behind it is to just prepare ourselves for what we have ahead of us. It's not going to be, it's never easy. It's a big budget. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of contractual obligations, but there's going to be some pain involved, we believe, going forward. Regardless of how things shake out in the next 6 months, there's going to be edits that we're going to have to endure, but there's things that we need. So my intention in trying to bring this to the full board for understanding is to just start preparing yourselves for where we have to go and giving us maybe a little longer look in the process. Most of us are at least 1 year in now, and so we have a better understanding we did last year on how the budget process works. And with more time and more open discussion about keeping things, you know, reasonable for the community, I think it's going to help us. Anybody else on the committee that wants to weigh in, please do.
Christine?
Do we have any idea when we may, are we shooting to get the copies of the preliminary budget to start reviewing? I know it was like in February last year. I'm just wondering if there's any chance we might get that a little earlier this year.
Christine, I don't have an answer for that definitely, but it's personally my intention to try to look at the budget maybe in more in packages. So maybe we look at a technology budget for starters, and then we look at other aspects so we can digest it a little bit better. I don't know how reasonable that is because everything's so intertwined with state aid and this, that, and the other thing, but maybe that might be easier for us. If we can accelerate it, we certainly will. So hopefully we can get back to you with a little bit more detail within the next couple of weeks.
Adam?
Yeah, I just want to chime in because there really are, as we sat down and looked at it and we're talking about, there's a lot more moving parts this year that are going to be tough to nail down. You know, to go back to the stop loss, for instance, just understanding the impact that the new health insurance plans from the state are going to, if they're going to be impacted at all, is hard to even project. So trying to understand on top of COVID, all the other requirements and how that's going to affect our budget is going to take, it's going to take a little bit extra time. To Russ's point, we're going to need to sit down, ask questions, make sure that we have the professionals in front of us that we can reach out to and get all of us get a good handle and good understanding on, because this next budget cycle is going to be really, really interesting.
Anybody else have anything? Mr. Smythe, anything else?
No, that concludes the FNF report if there's no other questions.
Okay. All right. Seeing none, we will open up public comment on any school district matter. Mr. Cross?
Hi, Betsy Cross. I live in Wall Township. I had a couple questions last month that I didn't get answered on. I had questions on the health benefits, that the figures were much larger. I think they were 100 times what they were in the prior year, and here we are a month later, and I've gotten no response. It's pretty concerning. It should be concerning for every board member here. Got a letter from the Monmouth County Prosecutor's Office, so I'm guessing that you all have a copy of it too. No? Okay. I guess you can Oprah it, right? Everybody can Oprah it. That'd be great. All right. Let's see, what else? Mr. Smythe, I asked you a number of questions at the last meeting, and you didn't answer them. So it'd be helpful if you could answer them tonight. Did you ever work for the architect, Ferrati, or Bovis Construction? I asked that a number of times, and it must have been, answered from.
Mrs. Cross, I apologize, but I'm going to direct Mr. Smythe not to answer that question.
Okay. All right. So I'm sure you're going to get that answer. I've asked it a number of times now over 15 months. Mr. Smythe did give me some information from Ferrati, some payments, and I saw in 2006, 2007, Ferrati was paid $89,973. And in the lease purchase agreement, there was about $100,000 for the architect. So we just need some clarification on, all these payments that they were getting. We still don't know where the money went for the lease agreement. Where did all the money get spent for the $625,000 for the trailers? All these questions, very simple. We should have had them back last in August. And here we are in November 10th, 2020, still asking simple questions.
Ms. Cross,
Who is this?
this is the person that you think doesn't join the meetings. It's Mr. Gartz. Good evening.
Yeah, you're not on the screen. I don't know who you are.
Oh, good. Then I won't talk to you. Good night.
Okay. I know everybody's trying to be transparent, so by a show of hands, can you tell me who has a copy of Dr. Lynch's report that you're referring to that you were going to put up tomorrow? Does anybody actually have a copy on the board? Yes, Andy's got a copy. I mean, we were told a month ago, the minute you had that report, it was going to be put online. Mr. Scarilla, you told us that. And here we are a month later, it's not online. And I think fingers crossed, you're hoping nobody gets on the call on Monday. Why don't you have it attached to the report? Why wasn't it listed on an agenda? So when somebody goes to look back, they can find it. Why? Everybody talks about being transparent, and then you do the complete opposite every single meeting.
Ms. Cross, I'm going to tell you that I think the superintendent said it was going to be posted tomorrow.
I know. At the last meeting, you told us the minute you got it, we were getting it any day. And the minute you're getting it, you're putting it online.
We did not get it any day. I just got my copy today.
Okay, well, then it should have been put online today.
Well, it was a little late to put it online. It was a little late to put it online today. It's going to be placed online tomorrow. That is not unreasonable to have it online within 24 hours of receipt. That's not unreasonable. And it'll be in less than 24 hours from when I received it.
I know. The problem is a month ago, you were supposed to have the report and you said the second you got it was going to be online.
You know what? I try to give you every opportunity, and I give you every courtesy I can. But this part is ridiculous. Dr. Lynch prepared the report when he got it done. We were looking to have Dr. Lynch appear last Monday. Dr. Lynch could not get the report done because of his work schedule. He got it done. There was a telephone conversation that took place with him. He's confirmed for next Monday night. He got the report to us today. That's the best he could do. We're not doing it. He did it.
No, the Mercury.
And I think you'll be very pleased with the detail in the report.
I know.
And you can knock yourself out on Monday night.
All right. On June 4th, there was a meeting on the Mercury, and Mr. Russell Gort still has not posted the minutes.
Liar. They're posted.
Oh, when did you post them?
Well after the minutes were supposed to be due, like I admitted at a meeting, but you don't want to hear the facts because I'm not on the video.
No. Tell me exactly the date you posted them so I don't have to Oprah it. Was it 4 months later?
No, I'm not going to tell you. Go Oprah them. Go look for them. You have a good plan for that. You have the situation down pat. Go get them.
Ms. Cross, your time is up. Thank you.
Didn't Mr. Scarilla just take up some of my time?
No, Ms. Cross, you spent your time arguing with everyone. Thank you. Have a good evening. Mr. Cortez?
Yes, I'm wondering if,
Could you just give your name for the record, please?
my name is Mike Cortez. I'm a resident of Wall Township. My daughter is in high school and my son is in Allenwood. I don't know if it was discussed at the start of the meeting. I signed on late. Is there a communication plan in effect to notify the parents of when the kids can be in school more often, whether it's a full day every other day or every day? They need to be in school. Do you, in addition to a communication plan, do you have any plan to have them in school this year, after the new year, or God forbid, we have to wait because you don't have a plan? Do we have to wait until September of 2021? Everything else should be secondary. You discussed a lot of stuff on this meeting, but everything else should be secondary to getting these children in school for longer time periods. This is unacceptable. They have, you know, those are my items to discuss, and I hope to get some answers from you people.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment that hasn't spoken? Okay, seeing none, closing public comment. Dr. Handerhan, could you just talk a little bit about our different phases that we have, just so everybody's familiar with them?
Yes, I will tell you that the intermediate school this week, it eliminated the virtual Wednesday. So the intermediate school is right now in line with the high school schedule, the 3-2-2-3 cohort system. Right now, we are seeing an increase. When I opened up the meeting, in my report, I gave detailed information with respect to the notification process when individuals in the school district have tested positive for COVID-19. I also shared the data, the number of positive cases. We have seen an uptick. We have seen an increase. The principals, the administrators, teachers, meetings with the WTEA, the WTASC, there has been a tremendous amount of discussion regarding moving in to try to increase live instruction for our students. Unfortunately, our desire is not in sync with the COVID-19 transmission in a very local area. Tonight, I announced that there were 23 positive cases in between students and staff in Wall Township schools since September. That's a considerable number, and it's something that we're working very closely with the health department to make sure that we are following all the guidelines. These cases have been spread out from September through today, as a matter of fact. So, but we have seen since the middle of October, things have been creeping up. So we are working with the health department. We are working with educators in the district to see when we are able to advance to increase the amount of in-person instruction. To say that there's not a plan, we do have a great deal of plans. We have multiple scenarios that we're planning for. One of the challenges in one of the scenarios is the challenge of lunch, and how do we safely provide an environment where students can eat lunch, and also where faculty can eat lunch safely. So there are a lot of factors. Another aspect that I spoke about earlier in the evening is the benefit of the hybrid schedule is that because we have the hybrid schedule with positive cases of COVID, we do not need to quarantine nearly as many children as students as we would have if we had all the students in class full time. In the secondary level, kids change classes. They change many classes. And if a student has tested positive and kids are within the 6-foot radius for the prescripted amount of time, that we are quarantining many students. And quarantine students, it's a 14-day quarantine. So the benefits to moving from the hybrid model to even a full-time, full schedule, early dismissal schedule at the secondary school, the amount of quarantining, it is undermining what we're trying to do with increasing live instruction. So it's a delicate balance. It's something that's discussed regularly. We have various plans to meet various scenarios depending on the conditions when we're able to accomplish this. We're headed into the holiday season very closely. We follow various news outlets. We read epidemiological studies, and there is a great concern for an even bigger uptick around Thanksgiving. So with that said, there is a tremendous amount of planning, but we have to consider the health data at that time, and we have to respond with a plan that meets the needs at that particular time. So I know it's difficult to not hear that on November 19th, the school district will be doing X. That's frustrating. It's frustrating for me, but we're dealing with moving factors constantly. We're dealing with changing variables, and we must provide the safest environment as possible for our students and our staff. And that is a tremendous responsibility and a priority.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. Christine?
Dr. Handerhan, would you be able to clarify for me, do we have a specific number? So let's say that we had been in school 5 days a week, for example, at the high school or the middle school. Is there a specific number where we then have to close the school down? Meaning that if we have X number of students quarantined, I think it's important for people to understand that, just to build off what you're talking about.
Yes, because
the hybrids, the schedule, that had we all been in full, we're getting dangerously close to numbers where we would not be able.
That is correct. That is correct. The numbers we have seen, the guidance that we get from the health department is when we have 2 or more independent cases, meaning they have not shared the same orbit. In the schools, in one of the schools in particular, we've had multiple cases rooted in the same cluster. The health department calls it a cluster. Because they were clustered with the same scenario, they contracted it through the same collection of people, through the same experiences, through contact tracing. That only counted as one event. That counts, even though there were multiple people, it counts as one event. However, if we have multiple events across the cohorts, or we have, if the kids were in full time, we are at much greater risk of what has saved us from closing this or having to consider closing the school is the fact that we've had 2 separate cohorts. When you have the 2 second cohorts, you're dealing with 2 independent groups. So our events have counted, we have, 2 students from the same cluster in one cohort, we may have another one in another cohort that's completely independent. That's 2. However, it's 2 across 2 separate cohorts. So the kids are only exposed to one event. So that means we didn't have to close the school. So had we been full time, have we had everyone back during that particular week, the guidance, according to the guidance that I have in writing and conversations, we would have closing the school for a specific amount of time would have been a very likely outcome.
Thank you. And we had one person put their hand up a little late when I was closing public comment, and you had already started talking, Dr. Handerhan. So I'm going to allow Samantha to go, even though public comment was closed. Samantha.
I'm sorry, I was trying to click the raise hand and it wasn't working for me, but I thank you.
I try to unmute people and it doesn't
I'm sorry
work.
about that.
No problem. Good evening.
Thanks. Good
Just your
evening.
name for the record. I'm sorry.
It's Samantha Bassett. Thank you. I have a question, and I guess it would be either Dr. Handerhan or Dr. Gleason that could answer it. I'm wondering about the NJSLA and whether those tests are required by the state for the to be administered in 2021. And if it's not required and it's up to the district, I would urge you to reconsider administering the tests this year. In-person class time is especially valuable, and I don't think it would be best for our students or for our staff to waste precious instructional time together on preparing for or taking these tests, which in a typical year, are administered over the course of several days and take several hours each day. And this would only be further complicated this year by having different cohorts on different days. We could end up in a situation where at the secondary level, students are missing weeks of lost instructional time. The best people to determine where our students fall in terms of meeting the standards this year are their teachers, not the NJSLA results. I don't even know what kind of meaningful data you could even expect this year from testing students as if they were attending school full-time, when at the secondary level, 50% of the students are only attending 2 half days a week in-person instruction on any given week. So if you could clarify where we're at kind of with that this year, I would appreciate it. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. President, may I address that? Thank you. Thank you, Samantha. That's a great question. And as you can imagine, a topic of hot discussion. While I'm still in Wall Township, I have had the opportunity to speak to some of the senior leadership team at the Department of Education, and that is one of the #1 priorities on their decision-making list. I'll tell you what some of the challenges I think may be with regard to answering that question easily, is that New Jersey public school districts receive ESSA funding, which is federal funding. Under the provisions of ESSA legislation, school districts are required by the United States Department of Education to administer statewide assessments. There was, I think, a collective agreement amongst New Jersey schools that we would receive a waiver. Most states would receive a waiver from the United States Department of Education because we are in a public health crisis. The U.S. Department of Ed has weighed in as recently as the last 2 weeks, letting us know that they are currently not planning to provide a waiver for state assessments. And so that mandate comes down from the national or federal level. With that said, there is some local degree of control around how those assessments, if indeed the Department of Ed at the federal level does not waive New Jersey districts from taking the assessment, there is some degree of state discretion and local discretion how those results will be used. What we do know is that the Department of Education has already told administrators and educators that there will not be a tie teacher evaluation to state assessments. So if I were to make a prediction right now in my current role, it appears that state assessments in real time today will be administered in districts, but the assessment data will not be tied to teacher evaluation, nor will it be tied to district accountability, but rather used to establish some kind of readiness level to see how deep the learning loss is. So that's about all I know right now. And I couldn't agree more with you around the idea that teachers know where their students are and where they aren't, and how difficult it will be to assess students because of the gaps they have in actual instructional time, because of security issues around bringing students in to be in a secure setting to take a state assessment. I'm not sure how all of that is going to play out. I imagine I'll be thrust into those conversations very quickly. But for tonight's purposes, what I would tell you is I will bring all of those concerns back to the department.
Does anybody have anything else? Seeing none. Dr. Gleason, since this is your last meeting with us, thank you so much. We wish you all the best, and you will be missed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you to all the members of the Board of Education. I wish everyone the very best.
Thank you. With that, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Second.
Motion by Russell, second by Chris. All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Aye.
Have a good evening.
Sure.